So it's day 617 on this project since the purchase of this car back in March of 2022. This was my original list of things that I wrote down that needed to be accomplished on the car, and we're kind of still up here just because obviously we moved to a new shop. Today is production day one in the new shop, and the objective today is to continue to work on removing all of the parts and components of this car that will not be saved. I did purchase a replacement windshield bow just in case this is actually bent to the point that it can't be reused or it's causing issues. We'll just get a new piece in there, that's fine. None of the portions of this side of the car are going to be saved. Everything on this side is going to be saved except for the majority of this quarter panel, although we may try to do patches in the bottom down in here. We're going to save this cross member because that's going to help us locate the rest of the car on the new sub-assembly, floor sub-assembly, once we get to that point. But there's a lot of cutting down in here that needs to happen, and a lot that needs to be cut away, because behind this panel there's another panel, and then there's another panel inside that are all welded to that floor assembly. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to cut the back end of the car apart. Probably going to have to lift the car up on the side and then attack it from the underneath on the other side, because there's no way really to get down in there where that second plate is behind the first plate. It's going to be rough. But it has to happen because all of this cancer has to come out before we can even get started on the new assembly. So I just spent the better part of 2 hours kind of setting up for this so that we can get in here with our angle grinder and our cutting tools to start where we left off, which was right here, and just to start cutting away all of this interior structure and make it all go away so that we can actually get to a clean, what's left of the vehicle, clean part of the car. Yeah, it looks even more daunting than when the last time I saw it, which was more than 6 months ago. This car, in whatever form it's going to be, is going to appear at the February local Orlando MCA show in Longwood, which is the first week in February, which gives me roughly 60 days to see what I can get accomplished on getting this structure torn down, cleaned up, prepped, and rebuilt. Over on this side, if you look over here, we have a auto twirler body cart and this is what we're going to build off of with the new floor assembly. This is what we're going to build off of. So these uprights attached to the points of the car that are the lower control arm locations in the front and the front leaf spring locations, shackle locations in the back. So the car will actually sit on this with the sub-assembly, and we will then begin to build up off of that structure, off of that clean structure. So that came in last week. Getting ready for what we're about to do now, which is hopefully get a lot of this superstructure gone as much as I can. and then start getting all of these pieces that are everywhere in the garage, all of these superstructure pieces and doors and parts and front end, get them all back on the car. So let's get to getting. So this is the 4 on the side that's not actually going to be retained. And then this side here is the after we've removed all of this material back up into that corner. We had to sacrifice a little bit of the gusset, but we have replacement parts coming so we can graft that in. And then the gray is the self-etch primer that is weld through, that will allow us to keep this area now that's now clean, free from additional rust, as well as being able to be welded to. So that's the most recent work. Then we have to get back up in there, and back up in there, and back up in there, and back up in there. We've got to save this whole piece, this connector from the side to the cross member, and we're replacing this entire side of the car, because there's the replacement part right there for the entire left side of the vehicle. So that's where we're at. Boy, that was not easy. But we accomplished what we set out to accomplish, and now we just have to clean everything up and protect it from any additional rust inside here and in here and in there, and then just start clearing all this back and cleaning all this out right in there. So good job team. So because we have two different paints that we're going to use, we have to mask off the areas that we're going to weld on, and those areas are going to get weld through etching primer. The areas that are not being masked are going to get rust reformer to inhibit the rust that may exist in the future, and to try to encapsulate the rust that we have currently going on now on those parts. And the rust inhibitor will go in there, but not where we're planning on welding. That will have a different kind of primer. You can certainly use blue tape if you have it. If you don't have it, use whatever you got. You're just preventing spray from getting where you don't want it to go. So it doesn't have to be perfect either, because none of this is going to show at the end of the process anyway. So just a little bit of that and a little bit of that. Good enough. Okay. So rust reformer, rust reformer, rust reformer, rust reformer. Okay, let's get, smashed my head. So what we're going to be working with is this Rust-Oleum product, rust reformer. Okay, so that will stop that rust and also protect the inside of that outer rocker from continuing to rust going forward. There is a bracket that goes here, a gusset that comes down off of this piece and then welds to the floor plan. So this pocket in here doesn't get any attention, and that's where rust can form, right in there. So spray that. Once we get this piece on here,
that cavity will be protected from rust.
So we have protected the rust that existed on that part, and helped to mitigate any potential rust going forward. And yet we haven't put any paint on the portion that we're planning on welding. That's going to take weld through primer. So now we have rust protection where it's needed, no rust protection where we don't want it, with regards to being able to still weld these corners and weld those flanges to the inner rocker assembly on the full plan. So now we've completely cleaned this entire area. Thankful that we were able to get that part done. The next step is to get up in there and to start working on the back end and clean that up. We'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll tape it off the opposite direction, or maybe even just use a cardboard box. We can actually use a cardboard box, and I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty easy. Being able to do the areas that you want to allow etching primer is you basically can take a box like this, take that off, take that off, and you really only need about an inch, maybe an inch or so. So what you do, okay, you take this box, just like that. And now what you can do is take your weld through primer and you basically have created a little mask that just does just enough to keep the other parts clean and free of the etching primer, and yet still allow you to be able to get the corners that you're trying to get on your flange. And there you go. We have weld through primer where we want that. We have rust inhibitor where we want that. And now this section is prepped and ready for accepting the new pieces. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I certainly appreciate you hanging in there with me, and all the support has been absolutely fantastic. It's been very motivating to see how you guys are working on your projects and how your lessons of doing it one way or doing it another way has helped me, and vice versa. Hopefully you saw some things that'll encourage you to move forward and keep going forward with your project. And the next step is to get into the back of the trunk area and start clearing that out so we can start chopping off this side of the car and get the rear assembly up under the car. So for Project 21F and here at the Parts Unknown, it's on to the next adventure.